Alex says, I don't know if the Skeptics can be turned around.
Oh,
very interesting.
I mean, there's definitely a scenario where they are, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
and Jack, you know what's funny is before you had that idea, I was thinking about Dylan Raiola at year 2 and like what improvement would look like. Because I was reading somebody yesterday and it had his numbers from year 1. And once again, I was reminded, wow, he had close to 3,000 passing yards, but he did not have a good touchdown to interception ratio. You know, what would that look like? And so I love that you asked this question, you know, and certainly with Rhule, there's a really interesting discussion to be had about what a good season would look like and how would that get people maybe saying, all right, you know what? I actually do believe that this is moving in the right direction. And we're talking about the Skeptics, which apparently there are like 2 of them. There's not that many Skeptics out there. We're in a bubble of negativity.
Here I was. I thought there were plenty. Now I don't know. And then I heard about your poll on 1620. I fully don't know where the fan base is. I know where I am. I know where Ken says I am. Tell the people about that poll, by the way.
Yes. So John and John asked a question. John asked a question of Happer and me, I think on like Thursday or Wednesday this week about like he has noticed a vibe shift in the fan base of kind of being like anti-Rhule. So John had noticed a vibe shift, and so he put out a question. Whether it is his recent press conferences, decision to cancel spring game / Tennessee series, or general grumpiness in the fan base, some folks have soured in their attitude towards Matt Rhule. Has your attitude towards Matt Rhule changed this offseason? And so I thought, wow, that's a really good topic because I've noticed it. I think you've noticed it, Jack.
That was the topic of that podcast that we had.
With more than 1,000 votes, 80% say, nope, still approved. And another 5%, Jack, say that their attitude is actually improved. Only 7.7% of the voters said that they have soured, and then another 7% said that they have been sour on Rhule. So if you combine the 2 negative ones, it's about 15% negativity and 85% positivity.
Vindication for Ken.
Yeah.
And it makes me happy too. Yep.
Yeah. And so what do we make of this? Because we were going to build a whole discussion around,
I tell you what I make of it.
These many negative people on the positive side, and yet there apparently aren't that many negative.
We've got all. I know what it tells me. All the negative people are in the I-80 Club chatting live during the show. Is what I've learned from that.
Yeah, it really is wild how the positive negative split was. I never would have guessed it was that number.
So, but putting aside, I just thought that was interesting, a good context. But putting aside that, for those who are, there are some who are skeptical and increasingly skeptical. We see it in the conversation. I'm not saying I am, but we definitely see it and hear it from some. And I do think, and obviously somebody said the only way that you can change skepticism is results. And I agree. That was what I was assuming. Right. But I'm just curious how, like, what is it like? There are a few things that I wonder, like, would it be the whole, we had the whole conversation in the fourth quarter. God forbid Ken hears that. But is it winning a few games, close games in the fourth quarter? Right?
That would do wonders for a lot of people.
How far does that go, even above just, or pulling an upset, right? I mean, we can talk win totals, but I think there's also specific things that would go a hell of a long way. And even if I'm not a complete skeptic, it would just take me to a much higher level. If you do those 2 things, I would feel really different about this program. Win multiple games, that go down to the wire against, good or comparable teams, and then pull off a legit upset. If you would do those 2 things, not even talking about win total, that would do the most possible, I think, for me. And Dylan Raiola looks completely like we expected. I would say that's 3.
Yeah. Okay. 2 things real quick there. The upset one is interesting. I think you and I have discussed this at some point in time in the last month or so. There's really not a whole lot of opportunities, Jack, at least on paper now, for them to upset teams because I don't think they're going to be a dog in very many games. I think it's like two like for sure dogs, so, Michigan and Penn State, right? One of those. I mean, dude, you beat Penn State. That is what you are describing.
So there's no other win other than those 2. I'm not disagreeing with you, but there's no other win other than those 2.
But USC at home. USC's a home game, right?
Yeah, it's just USC could be a lot of different things then. That could be one.
And for the record, I'm talking about like true upset. I'm not talking about, Nebraska's on the road at Minnesota or Maryland. I can't remember which game is home, which is on the road. And they beat them as a 2-point dog. Cool. That's a good win. But what you described was like, oh my gosh, look at the upset win that Nebraska just pulled.
It's an unranked team beating a top 10 team, basically, is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you agree with generally that framework?
Yeah. Or I guess maybe Nebraska's a on the edge top 25 team. They're barely in, and they upset a top 10 team. I think Penn State is going to be the best example of this year, because they're going to be a national championship contender. And if Nebraska went there in November and pulled off that win, that would be the biggest win that the program has had.
Yeah, if they do that, no question. I think the Michigan game would do it too, though. Wherever Michigan is.